Sandy and I so enjoyed this podcast because it was a visit with old friends, but we forgot to ask them for their website. So rather than you folks having to get a hold of us to find out what their website is, I'm putting a couple bumps in here to let you know that you can find Guy and Ryan at www.wildhorizon.co.za. There we go. We're live. And we're live with South Africa.
I know. We were just saying 10 years ago, this wouldn't have been possible.
Welcome to Scuttlebutt Podcast. I'm Rich Mellon, and this is actually more got to do with our other series, our hunting series, Married to the Hunt.
Right.
And we are live with South Africa and with Guy and Ryan Swart. Ryan, are you moving things around there? You didn't want your dad to be on screen, or?
It's just a little bit of chaos. We got a recording box that came up and wouldn't go away, so we couldn't see you at all.
Oh.
We're fully on track now.
Technology.
Yes. Well, it is. What was kind of prompted this was our Facebook memories have been coming up from 2019 when we were last over to South Africa to see you folks, and because of the last year of crazy and that, we can't travel, can't do anything. We were very much missing being able to go to South Africa and go hunting and travel with you folks. And so that's what prompted us to want to reach out and do this podcast.
Yeah, well, we miss you guys being over here incredibly. It's there's so many things we want to show you, and so many things we want to do with you guys, and we've got some really nice concessions we want to take you to. In fact, next weekend I'll be heading up into one of those remote areas, and I really wish you guys were here. It's just ridiculous that you can't be here.
We agree.
We've even went so far as to get the vaccine, the jab, and the reason being is that we're getting a little bit long in the tooth, as you can see by the gray. And well, I am not Sandy, but I don't want to waste another 3 or 4 or 5 years waiting for all this to get straightened out. So we're going to be ready when they open the border. We're going to be ready. We're going to be able to travel.
Yeah, Rich, we very much in the same boat. We are hoping also to start with our vaccination program in a more sort of complete form in South Africa. A lot of us are getting the vaccine at the moment, and news is that we will be able to travel once we've had the jab as well. They're talking about the EU opening up to us coming there, and the States opening up. So let's hope. We'd certainly like to get over to Canada as well in March next year. And what we're finding at the moment is that, funny enough, the Americans are coming to South Africa extensively to hunt, and Russian folk as well. The Canadians and the British are not coming, and obviously the Europeans have not been coming to the same extent. But certainly the Americans are coming over extensively to hunt at the moment.
They have a better vaccine program down there. Canada is like a third world country for how we're getting the vaccines, where I think we're actually elbowing a lot of third world countries in the corner, as they would say in hockey, so that we can snatch their vaccines.
Yeah. What's interesting is that the folk from the States have been coming even prior to them getting their jabs. So they, as long as they have a negative test 72 hours before coming here, and do the same on returning to the States, they can travel here, and that hasn't been a problem, whether they're vaccinated or not. So that kind of travel has not really held up the hunting in terms of the American folk coming here. The only issue is they have to fly Qatar Airlines or via Doha, which is a pretty long haul. But they get here and they're hunting, and they're getting back. Obviously, with the vaccines, it'll ease up even more. They're talking now about reopening direct routes out of the States to South Africa.
Oh, fantastic!
Once the jabs are progressing.
So you are open though for business, like if the originating country, like the United States, allows you to travel, South Africa is open for business. As long as people are negative, they can come in.
Absolutely, yeah. So a number of outfitters are very busy. Those that did market in the States and Russia in particular seem to be hunting in South Africa. But we're open for business. There's a lot of game around. The game seems to be proliferating. The trophies are running around, presenting themselves. Ryan's been, he can tell you he's had a few weeks of extensive hunting with local South Africans and with Americans. So it's been been interesting.
Yeah, well, he's as hard as the Black Death on animals. That guy, you don't need you don't need anybody coming into South Africa if Ryan's around.
Yeah, and with last year no one was hunting. Even South Africans weren't hunting last year, so the game populations really went up. And as my dad said, the trophy animals are all over the place. So we've had an absolute ball this year because the animals have been everywhere, and they've had no pressure either. It's almost like starting new, hunting new farms. It's been a lot of fun.
Wow.
So there's animals that you didn't that have really changed in that year's time, or have the trophy quality has gone up. It's amazing.
It's had a surprising impact, just 1 year of no hunting.
Yeah. Like one single year, that's astounding.
Yeah, and well, you can imagine there's the number of folk that do come over to hunt in South Africa. And last year we were pretty much closed for business completely. So that was an awful lot of folk not hunting in South Africa. And the net result is that there's a lag in the takeoff of the game all over the place. It's fantastic to see.
I wonder if the same would be in North America, because a lot of the sheep hunter outfits and whatnot, they cater more to the Americans and probably some Europeans as well, I suppose. But I wonder if their trophy quality has changed any.
Yeah, it'd be interesting.
Yeah.
In fact, this past weekend, we spent at a reserve inland of East London. It's about 36,000 acres. And Rich, it's crazy. We were the only people in the place. And number of black rhino. So they have they have buffalo, rhino, and a lot of the plains game. But this particular area is purely conserved as it has been there historically. The reserve was probably formed about 30 to 40 years ago. And they've made no ecological changes, excepting that they made sure that they took off anything that didn't occur there naturally.
And reintroduced game that was no longer in the area.
But it's absolutely wild.
Wow.
And we must have closed in on at least 16 to 17 black rhino this weekend, getting 20 to 30 yards from them. And it's such a nice thing to see. They're absolutely wild. It's crazy. And as I say, our group, the 6 of us, were the only people in the entire place, 36,000 acres. We closed in on buffalo, black rhino, and then obviously all the plains game, and kudu, and those sort of things. But it was really, really nice to get that close to all those black rhino, which is it's a pretty unique thing, because generally white rhino are what you would see if you were traveling in South Africa. The black rhino are in the thicker bush and less common. And it was really great to be able to experience that. And it's something you guys must do when you're here again. We'll take you in there. You go creep up on some black rhino. Really, really easy.
Listen, we kind of crept up on a white rhino pair when we were there 2 years ago, and that was I didn't know they were there.
She was a little freaked out. Well, I think you and I talked about this guy. I was reading Frederick Selous, and he first came to South Africa in, I believe it was 1874, maybe a year or two before that. But he was a professional hunter and traveled through South Africa, and they were ivory hunters killing the elephants there. But back then, the black rhino was far more populous than the white rhino, and that the white rhino has profited from
farming,
from agriculture.
Yeah, and yeah, look, white rhino are easier to manage and easier to control. Black rhino is a bit more aggressive and you know, spends more time in thick bush. And I think the black rhino was more aggressive toward those hunters in those days. So they got hammered quite hard by those guys. I mean, Salou and those guys would just shoot 4 before breakfast in case, you know, they weren't too particular. But it's really great to see these populations here at the moment. It's fantastic.
So this reserve that you're in today, or on the last couple of days, is it an area that's going to be hunted, or were you hunting?
We weren't hunting, but it is possible to hunt there. Yeah.
Okay. 36,000 acres. People have no idea the size of some of these places. You know, that's gigantic.
Yeah, and it's so impressive because it's got very few roads. So you literally it's just a massive wilderness. You know, it's special. It really is special. Yeah, you got to see it.
I know the one place we hunted with you, Mandalay, and we would be up on the one hillside. You know, the valley floor is below you, and so you're up on pretty good ridges there. But as far as we could see, was the area we could hunt, and we could see for miles and miles. You know, down through the valley floor, up the other side. I mean, it was all height of. If I understood Clint right, it was all height of land was the boundaries in that. And it was just astounding how big that area was.
Beyond it.
Yeah.
You could even see where breakfast was.
Yeah, so the you know, I think what we're hoping to see, you know, once things open up again, is a fair amount of interest. I think the guys are chomping at the bit to get back to South African hunt. I know that I say there's certainly the guys from the UK are, and I'm pretty sure the Canadian guys are. And I think it's going to come right. This thing can't go on forever and ever, and we're hoping in the next 6 to 8 months that there's a bit more movement around the world and guys can start coming in.
Yeah, we're hoping the same. The 2 years ago memory that came up in my Facebook here a couple of days ago was us getting on the plane in Calgary. And you know, hunting is very important to us when we come to South Africa, but for a lot of people, they also want that sightseeing experience as well. So our first stop, that was arranged by you, Guy, was to go up to Victoria Falls, and I'll be posting some of that on my Facebook page when my pictures and stuff come up. But that was really unique and a lot of fun. And then from there we went to Kruger National Park, which you can't even take a gun in there with you. So all of that had to be in storage and whatnot beforehand. But I think it's an important thing to make people aware of, is that it's not just the hunting, although that's what's most important to many of, well, to us, but to also a lot of our friends and acquaintances that want to come for a genuinely really good hunting experience. They also want to see some of the other things that maybe they wouldn't hunt, you know, and so that, you know, Kruger and some of that is just so important too. Yeah,
Sandy, that, you know, facilitating that is very necessary, and it's really good fun. You know, you just see a whole different aspect to purely hunting grounds, and the you know, the cultural side, the fishing side, and the game viewing side is a massive part of what we do. As I said, this place that we were at this weekend, would really love to show you guys that, because even in Kruger, you won't see those populations of black rhino. You know, it's in the wild. It's they just.
We didn't see one.
It's ridiculous.
Did we see a black rhino?
Yeah, they were 918 yards away.
We saw them.
We were up on this outlook, this very high outlook, and the huge plain out below us, and the Zeiss binos would range them, but it was 918 yards. So that was the only
You
rhinos we
couldn't get a
saw.
really good look at them.
No, that was the only rhinos we saw in Kruger.
We were at one stage today, 15 yards.
That's kind of close for comfort.
Yeah, it is fairly close. Yeah, everyone was a little bit anxious. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Sandy was, for her, it was always a giraffe. That's what she wanted to see so bad, was a giraffe. And you took us to a spot where we could see a giraffe, I believe, on the first trip. And she said, next time we go back, I want to see lots of giraffes. Well, after we'd seen about the 900th giraffe on the first day, I said, have you seen enough giraffes?
But like Kruger was just like, there was a lioness that walked right in front of our vehicle on the road and never paid us any mind. I mean, that's just not something you just see. So there was lots of experiences like that they're just once in a lifetime things.
I liked the hyena that trotted down the road, but past us with a chunk of spine in its mouth.
Always good.
Those animals impressed me. I was surprised at how heavy they were, how dense they were. A hyena, I had this impression that they were a smaller jackal kind of animal, but they are a big animal.
Yeah, no, it's a huge animal, and they're exceptionally strong. I mean, they're powerful animals.
Yeah, they say that their bite is stronger than a lion's bite.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, we're missing Ryan over here too, because 2 years ago, he stayed when you originally came in March for the Boat and Sportsman show in Edmonton, and got a little bit of experience on the West Coast with some other friends, and then he came and chopped wood and did a whole bunch of other things at our place.
Well, he wanted to skin. He wanted to skin. Well, I showed him animals that were pretty strange to skin for him.
Yeah. It's all experience, though, hey?
Yeah.
It was actually interesting, and surprisingly, skinning all those fur bearers has made me quite interested in the different ways that we can do our animals now. And because of that, I've got quite a few lynx and jackal tube skins hanging off the wall. Because it's something that we don't do, and it's quite interesting to see how you guys do it and bring it home.
So interesting then. If you have those the lynx and the jackal over there, can you have them tanned? Like, would people be able to purchase them and then bring them back, or the lynx probably would that need a CITES permit?
No, it won't. Go back with all your taxidermy.
Oh, well, that's really good to know, because when we were there back in 2011, we saw a lynx.
Yep.
And we had set up to try and hunt it, but I don't know where it went.
Give us a slip.
Yeah, gave us a slip. And then when we were there in 2019, there were lynx that had killed a goat on Mandalay.
Yeah.
But I guess we kind of got fleeting glimpses of them, but that would be something interesting probably for some of your clientele as well, I would think.
How come you haven't sent me any pictures of these? Of these case-skinned animals? I would love. I thought you hadn't done any of it. I would like to see some.
I'm waiting to get them back. Most of them are still lying in the salt at the moment.
Oh,
we
okay.
don't have the climate to dry off the skins like you guys do.
Yeah.
So everything has to go in salt first.
Of
So
course.
most of them are still in the salt. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, you don't have to be here very long to realize that we're pretty dry.
Yeah, I'd say. And Rich, speaking of trophies, that whole thing of the UK government banning trophy import is also going to be really messy for the guys from the UK. And we're really hoping it doesn't set a precedent, or that the rest of the world don't start following their intentions, because that'll have a devastating effect on our industry and on the whole ecology in this country. Because if we can't maintain these big areas with hunting income, they're going to revert back to stock farming.
Yes.
And that's one's just got to really hope that other governments don't follow suit. Well, firstly, one's got to hope that the UK government review it and don't get involved in banning. You know, it's crazy that countries so far removed can dictate to African countries to such an extent. You know, we need to manage the wildlife here, and part of that is hunting and trophy hunting, and it's just not going to go down well if the governments and the rest of the world start banning the import of trophies to their countries.
It's been a real retro kind of thing. It's, you know, it's back to when a lot of African countries were part of the British Empire, so to speak, right? Where Britain dictated what was going to happen. And now here we are in 2021, and we're reverting back to some of those colonial rules. I wonder if that's maybe the tack that African countries should be taking with the British.
Here's my thing, though, is the European countries, the British countries, all that, they have decimated their own wild populations. They have destroyed, you know, they have a tiny fraction of their wild forest left. They have no real wild animals hardly left at all. And yet they want to dictate to South Africa how they should manage their animals.
Yeah.
You know, like, I mean, that is wrong. That is very wrong. And when you take a look at what percentage of South Africa is linked to tourism, and of that tourism, how big a chunk is trophy hunting, safari hunting?
Yeah, the income, I mean, the income generated and the environmental impact of a hunter versus a tourist is crazy. You know, the hunter comes over here, spends a serious amount of money on the conservation area that they're hunting, and their environment, the impact on the environment is minimal in terms of, you know, vehicles, people per site, and we certainly can't continue without that trophy hunting. You know, it's
well, the game can't. Yeah.
Well, the game can't. You know, and that's the problem. I mean, already I've seen two guys that owned massive wildlife areas that are now seriously considering reverting back to cattle, because you know, well, firstly it started with COVID, and now a lot of their client base was UK based, and they almost, between COVID and this whole thing with the trophies being banned to the UK, are taking the path of least resistance. You know, go back to cattle.
And you understand why people make those choices.
It's terrible to see, because they're actually lovely areas that are almost pristine again. Mm-hmm. It's taken 30 years to get them back to being pristine, and now they're talking about cutting the game and getting rid of all the game and put it into and sell it to the butcheries in town and go back to beef. And terrible.
I saw a comparison, and people talk about, well, we can get rid of trophy hunting and we'll just all do photo safaris. And so here was the comparison, was that you know, a farmer or a landowner has two eland on his land, and a trophy hunter comes, he stays there, he hunts them for a couple of days, he kills one of the elands, he pays for the eland, the meat stays there and is used, and then he leaves. A photo safari comes through, they drive down the roads or whatever, they take pictures, they're gone the same day. There's no income from the animal, there's no protein, there's none of that. So it's one of those straw men where people talk about, if we get rid of safari hunting, then everybody will do photo safaris. No, just then you won't have that money there. Already you can do photo safaris wherever you want, the same places where you hunt. That's not a big deal, but it is 20% of the dollars goes into a photo safari as compared to what goes into hunting. And you know, one isn't exclusive of the other, yet people won't pay those kind of money just to come take pictures. I mean, why? You can watch it on National Geographic, right? I mean,
yeah, we just got to, as I say, we don't know which way they're going. The guys that I deal with in the UK are terrified that it's going to go through. They really are. And they, you know, they they're desperate to get you as quickly as possible so that they can try and get trophies back before this all happens.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Rich, not the flip side, but I think what one also has to understand is that fortunately hunters have a serious passion for conservation. And if that does happen, I do know that a lot of the UK guys that do come here would probably still come to hunt because hunting is their passion. And maybe just take back a block mounted photo. One's got to hope, you know. And hopefully those guys remain, you know, as passionate about conservation as they always did, and are still prepared to come and have the experience, because really that's what it's all about.
Yes.
Is the experience and the hunt. As you well know, we take an awful lot of time making sure that good pictures are taken of you and your trophies.
Well, but it's more than that, Guy. You know, I mean, your whole crew there. It's easy to just be family with your group, but they take such good care of all of your clients. I know that we're not exclusive in that. We hear from others that have.
I'm not special.
No,
I'm not.
no, you can shower in cold water.
Oh.
That happens.
But it's more than just the hunting too. And I think that people forget that there's so many people that depend on the wildlife for living. It's not just the outfitters, it's everyone. It's everyone in the towns that are nearby. It's all of your staff, whether that's your cleaning staff, cooking staff, all your PHs. It's
the taxidermy industry.
Pardon me?
The taxidermy industry.
Oh, the taxidermy industry. Yeah. I mean, it's everyone, but I think about, you know, when we were, it was Mandalay that was closest to Queenstown. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And just going into that little butcher shop, we became regulars. Every time we came through Queenstown, we had to stop at that little butcher shop. You know, it's just things like that we remember. And as we're thinking about 2 years ago, getting on the plane in Calgary to come your way, all of a sudden we start thinking about those things, you know. I mean, the little butcher shop, you know, everything that just goes into a trip like that. It's not just one thing. It's just such a explosion of experience.
I said I wanted to go buy coffee from the grumpy lady in the gas station. Sandy and I so enjoyed this podcast because it was a visit with old friends, but we forgot to ask them for their website. So rather than you folks having to get a hold of us to find out what their website is, I'm putting a couple bumps in here to let you know that you can find Guy and Ryan at www.wildhorizon.co.za. You know, one thing that I want to talk about, which is really cool because our culture is moved on a bit from this, but you, Guy, are a professional hunter, and now Ryan, you are also a professional hunter. This is a very cultural thing with it's not just an industry, but it's taken very seriously. And for you to get your certification as a professional hunter, Ryan, give us a little background about what all was involved in that, because you're more recent than your dad. He was probably, they still were showing best kill shot on a pterodactyl or a Tyrannosaurus Rex or something back then. But
He's still learning. Getting certified isn't a big deal. Generally, when you go to pass all the tests, they assume that you are already accomplished in the field. So it's more of just a short finishing course. But like I said, if you haven't been doing it for a while, then you're not going to get through. So in terms of your theoretical things and the practicals that they test you on, it's not a long time and it's not a long course.
but you have to be relatively experienced to get through it. Fortunately, I grew up with my dad, so I've been doing it for quite a while compared to other guys my age. But yeah, it's helped me.
Yeah, Rich, I think that, I don't think the learning ever ends. Becoming the professional hunter involves the legal side of it, all the sort of theoretical side of it. And there's the number of exams that are going to be passed, and you've got to qualify. The real apprenticeship starts when I think before you go there, and then really gets going when you finish there, because that's when you spend time with guys like Clint and Ian and people that have been doing it for many years, and you start learning the skills of not just hunting and skinning and tracking, and it's also dealing with people and understanding your client, understanding all the clients, and understanding how your client reacts in the situations when they're in field. Different guys react differently when they're on animals. You guys are fairly accomplished hunters. We sometimes exposed to folk that are not very accomplished hunters, and that's when your sort of talent and your skill and your experience comes forward. Is when you've got to deal with folk that are sort of first time in Africa and haven't done a lot of hunting. Classically, we often get folk from the UK that are largely bird hunters or bird shooters, and come over and they want to do antelope hunting in Africa, and it's quite a different kind of hunter, a different kind of person. That you got to teach them how to stalk. You got to teach them where to shoot an animal. You really got to spend time with them before you get onto the animal, and it's identifying those situations and knowing how to handle them, and making sure that person goes back with the best experience they have, that they could. And that takes a lot of time and a lot of experience and a long time. And Ryan's certainly getting those hours in at the moment. 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night, making sure that the salt is properly into the skins and the skins have been properly prepared for the taxidermist. 4 o'clock in the morning, having the coffee ready for the next day's hunting, all forms part of it, and then you've got to identify the animal, make sure it's the right length trophy, get the guy within his comfortable shooting range, get him comfortable to take the shot, because you've got to make sure that the person has the best experience he can.
There's two things that I wanted to point out, though. One was, how long was the final test? Wasn't it like 5-6 days or whatever, Ryan?
12 days.
12 days. Yeah. Okay. Well, see, now that's way different than qualifying over here to be a guide. But you guys have to know all the legal laws and which they do here as well. But I mean, you even went hunting during the final test. You had to do preparation. You had to be a professional hunter for one another, that kind of stuff. I believe it was quite a feather in your dad's cap. You taught the skinning at that course, right?
Yeah, the guy who was supposed to teach the skinning was unavailable that day, so they asked if anybody else could skin a full mount. So I put my hand up and taught the class how to do that.
Good for you. And the other thing I wanted to mention was, you talked about one time we were there. You talked about the UK hunters guy, and you said they were, on average, they were a terrible shot. And I said, what do you mean? He says, well, it took us a while to realize, but he said they all shoot shotguns and they're all used to moving game, like the bird's moving. And I said, so, and I thought about it. I thought, you're right. That's probably a big thing to overcome. So once you realize that you had to adapt for their situation, and you couldn't make the game move, but you could make sure that they understood it wasn't moving, and it made a big difference. So that's interesting. I think what people who've never been don't understand is how much a professional hunter does.
Yes. Well, we were talking about that too this week, and that just, you're kind of like one man or one band
Hospitality.
hospitality industry, right?
Exactly.
Like it just like there's everything, well, I remember our first trip to South Africa when Richard peppered you guy with I couldn't even guess how many questions as we traveled through the countryside, and you had an answer for everything. And that's really important too for people who may, I mean, we always thought we'd come to South Africa once, and now we're thinking about planning our fourth trip. So it happens to people that way. But when you go, you want to know so much about the area, or we did anyway, about the area and the people and the customs and everything. You have to know so much of that on top of just what's related to the hunting and the concession, and knowing that, like we hadn't hunted at Mandalay before, and this was our third trip, but when we were with Clint, he knew every nook and cranny and around the corner, and there's going to be a dam, and then you're going to be, I mean, it's just, it was so, well, it just is so professional.
But yeah, they have these huge areas, and
Mhm.
they don't have to know just one. Like they have to know all of these different areas,
Yeah.
and they're gigantic, and and there are so many different wild animals also in South Africa. How many big game species do you have, like indigenous? 41?
32 huntable species.
32 huntable. So I mean,
Awesome.
there are 32 different animals that have 32 different habits that you have to have, knowledge of, and that we're we have 2 different deer here, but they're pretty much the same. Yeah. It's pretty different that way. The other thing is that you are there with the person all day long. You have to have the right kind of personality, because good Lord, Clint put up with us for a month, seen us for every meal, cooked practically every meal, and cook over the braai at night, which is South African barbecue on that wonderful acacia wood, which forever Africa will be the smell of acacia wood, cooking some meat. And you guys are meat eaters, and that means there's at least 3 kinds of meat for every meal, and I'm okay with that.
Or a peppermint for lunch.
Oh, get over it. That was one day, one time.
When you're on animals, you hunt the animals. I have given Clint a bad time about that for a long time, but I had a really nice zebra at the end of that hunt, so it was good.
Yeah, and then you guys also come to Africa expecting it to be warm and toasty.
Was that like the biggest oops anybody ever did? Was her showing up in Africa without a coat? Or are there some other good ones?
Not the first and not the last. Don't worry.
Well, good. I'm glad I'm not unique in that, but it was funny because we have some friends who are from South Africa, from Cape Town area. And when I said the first time we were going in June, the first 2 weeks of June, and she said, "Oh my, you're going to be cold." And I said, "Oh, I'm not. I'm an Alberta girl. I just about froze to death."
Only until you took my coat,
Yeah,
and then I was the one without a coat.
It happens.
So you've been talking to me. You've been sending me pictures. You and Ryan have been going up northwest, I believe, to a different area.
Yeah, it's near a town called Crofronet. It's about 20,000 acres of low fenced,
Completely free range hunting.
free range hunting. So you can only hunt there June through to August, but it's really, really remote, and it's very different to a lot of the scenery that you guys have hunted.
That's cool.
Shooting mainly springbok, kudu, waterbuck, steenbuck, those kind of things. But really, really nice and remote and quiet. And I'm headed there next Friday. Ryan's got another hunt. He's guiding again next weekend, so I'll be going up myself.
Cool.
Going to look for some kudu for myself.
so that's really interesting because you hear a lot of people talking about free range, and a lot of people who haven't been to South Africa to hunt, and even, you know, when we talk about 20,000 acres or 30 some thousand acres, then you get people that talk about, well, we only do free range, but I don't believe that they are talking about what the definition of free range is in South Africa. So can you give us a snippet of what that is?
When we talk about free range, the borders of the farm don't stop the natural flow of animals. So that 20,000 hectares, all the animals that occur within it can move freely within it and beyond its borders. On a lot of the farms, the game farms that we hunt, the game's limited into the hunting area, so the 30,000 or the 10,000 hectares that you're hunting. So free range farms are typically more difficult to hunt because the game's distributed over a bigger area. Yeah,
I think something that or a concept that is misunderstood. The free range hunting, a lot of the areas we hunt are that big that even though they may be high fenced, the area is so big that it doesn't affect the natural movement of that animal or of those animals. They would only move 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 10 kilometers, and the area that you're hunting in is much bigger, is far more vast than that. So there are fences. There are going to be fences somewhere. Eventually, you're going to get to a fence. You probably find Tanzania, central Mozambique, Zambia are the only places that you're really going to get pure free range hunting. In terms of the hunting in South Africa, in June, July, August, and in conservancies, which is where we do quite a bit of our hunting, it's all low fenced, and it doesn't slow the game down. You know, the game can jump or go through those fences, so they're not restricted by fences. As Clint says, most game, if you throw a bucket of water at a fence and the water goes through, the game will go through. So, you know, those low fences don't restrict the movement of animals. High fenced areas, obviously, you do get smaller high fenced areas, but we don't utilize any of those. We always work on a basis that the fences would not restrict the typical habitat of the animal, of the game. And that's pretty much where we are. A lot of the conservancy hunting and the free range hunting in June, July, August is very much low fenced. Yeah, there's no restriction. The animals move.
I guess the biggest difference is between the free range or the low fence and the game conservancies is the game conservancies own the animals and they control when they're hunted, and the free range can only happen in June, July, and August, right?
Yeah, for certain species.
Yeah.
So
okay.
Yeah, so not all species. Yeah.
Generally, the species that historically have naturally occurred in the area have a hunting season, and the species that we introduce to the area will have no bag limits and no hunting season. So depending on where you are in the country, the different animals will have different hunting seasons.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Richard, and as you say, the high fenced areas, there is more control, and the game is owned pretty much by whoever owns that area. But you know, as you well know, the places we hunt are extensive. So
no, like, I mean, I have no concern whatsoever. Like, I mean, I have seen what most people, when they talk about a high fence, I mean, they're talking about several acres, and that happens in a lot of places. You know, there are places in Saskatchewan or in Texas and that where they have very small areas that are fenced off. I mean, if you technically want to talk about it, a mature whitetail buck will live its life in 40 acres. Well, my home quarter is 160 acres. I could have 4 that lived here and their whole life, and never leave here, even though there's not a fence. I've never been in a situation where the fence played any role whatsoever. I know that in some cases the fence played a role in that you could keep the neighbor's cattle out, or that you could. I think that we were at that one. The one place up at the Kalahari there where they were trying to stop lynx from getting in. So they had an electrified fence, but one place we were at where the cabin was, we could drive in 15 kilometers in any direction before you ran into a fence. That's huge. I don't care what
the hunting, you can walk yourself almost to death before you hit a fence, before you get the animal you're wanting. You can take days. Sometimes you can start wishing for a fence to come close.
Well, I know we were all pretty flat-footed by the time we left the Kalahari the last time, because we'd walked so much. Even Des was really suffering, and all of us had some kind of an ailment, I think, by the time we were finished. But it was good.
He didn't like the sand at all, did he?
No, well, the sand was hard on everybody. I think Clint had a bum ankle, and my hip was bothering me, your back, and then I don't remember what I think it was his back that was really giving him some trouble. So anyway, it's just, it's hunting, and you're going to run into situations like that wherever you go. If you're really diligent and you're not just traveling around in a bucky,
How is Des doing?
No, Des is good. I had a long chat to him the other day. No, he's doing very, very well there. Yeah. No, he's he's lucky. He's a super
of
guy.
course.
Sandy and I so enjoyed this podcast because it was a visit with old friends, but we forgot to ask them for their website. So rather than you folks having to get a hold of us to find out what their website is, I'm putting a couple bumps in here to let you know that you can find Guy and Ryan at www.wildhorizon.co.za.
How is Canada at the moment with COVID? Are you guys dropping off?
Oh,
Yes,
yeah.
we are. Yeah. It has been dropping probably the last 2 to 3 weeks, particularly in Alberta. That's really the numbers that we see mostly. And now I think in Alberta, we're under 500 people in hospital. And the numbers have really dropped off. Even the number of positive tests that are coming on a daily basis have been dropping quite extensively.
And we're at what? 60?
And we're at 61.5% of eligible Albertans have had at least 1 dose of the vaccine. So eligible is 12 years and older here.
Yeah.
And you no longer have to fit into an age grouping in order to be able to get your vaccine. It's just whomever. They have employed all of the pharmacies pretty much,
which was brilliant.
Which was a brilliant idea. Rather than having people come to one central location for vaccines, now you can go to a number of different places, and so there isn't a congestion of people. But certainly we've had our first one, and that was 3 weeks ago. And the pharmacist who administered it for us said that he would call us when we could come back and get our second one. So we're hoping that by the time, we're sort of planning for next year at this point, I would say, to be able to buy a plane ticket and come and see you.
So the East, South Africa at the moment, certain provinces seem to be having a bit of a resurgence. In the whole country, we're looking at an average of about 3,800 new cases a day on average. Our province is sitting at about 80 new cases a day. We've got 161 people in hospital with eight people in ICU in the whole province. So there are 161 people with COVID in 103 hospitals right as we speak at the moment.
Wow.
Which is
and so what is, sorry, what's the population in the province that you live in?
I would be lying if I had to tell you. I don't
Okay.
know off the top of my head.
Well, we don't want that.
The whole country is sitting at about 65 million.
Right.
And we sit, as I said, we're sitting at just under 4,000 new cases. But this evening, they're talking about upping the restrictions a little bit. It's slowly been climbing. And the problem with it is that it does get exponential. So they are going to come in with a few tightening down. I must say the country's been pretty freed up for the last 2-3 months. Really, I mean, you wouldn't say that there's a pandemic if you had to drive around.
Right.
So I think it's probably not a bad idea just to try and quell this next wave. But certainly our province seems to be not too badly affected at this stage by any means.
So
in terms of vaccines, they're busy with the over 60s at the moment, and it seems to be going pretty well. My parents have had a lot of the folk that we know have had their first vaccines, and they also are doing it at all the pharmacies, clinics, hospitals. So it seems to be happening, and we just hope for a speedy sort of vaccine program just to try and get movement through, to the country. Rich, and you probably had it over there, but a large portion of particularly the coastline and our area and the Western Cape are highly, highly dependent on tourism and hunting tourism, ecotourism, that kind of thing. And it's just been devastating.
Well, you were saying to me that like Clint's wife has horses and they do trail rides and that, and it's a big business, but those horses eat every day, even when there's nobody showing up, and that's tough.
Well, and it's not only the tourists that come for trail rides. She has a lot of young ladies from the UK that kind of intern with her that aren't able to be there either.
Yeah.
It's been devastating. So, we just need our country and all the other countries of the world just to get this thing back to normal as quickly as possible. And that's what we've got to hope for in the next year. And get you all back here.
Yes. Well, and for you, hopefully, to come back to Canada for the Edmonton Boat and Sportsman Show as well. So that, I wanted to ask you though, Ryan, are you done your schooling now? Like I'm not talking about professional hunting schooling, but your other studies.
Oh, so the unimportant stuff then.
Because of COVID, where it has actually helped me is I've moved on to studying through correspondence, which is purely online. So I can work around the hunting. So if I know that I'm going to be hunting, I'll work ahead for a couple of weeks and make sure that I can hunt sort of guilt-free for a while. And then after the studying, when I'm finished hunting.
Guilt-free.
Working a while at the moment.
Oh yeah, and you're supposed to be studying right now.
Well, he is. This is really
8 days
studying.
of hunting, and you're supposed to be back studying.
Isn't it amazing? Isn't it amazing that when you say guilt-free, how much guilt sounds like your dad's voice? So tell us about your hunting right now. What you've been exercising that freshly minted PH card, and you're doing some outfitting, or here we'd call it guiding. Tell us about it. You sent me some great pictures.
So mostly right now, I've been doing local hunts with South African guys. And it's good because they do shoot a lot of animals. So it's just time in the field, and it's just staying in the motion, and you're still doing the same entertaining, and you're still getting new clients and different clients, and you're still meeting new people. And it's just keeping the hunting side fresh. So not forgetting anything. But it's been a lot of fun. And it's a bit of time out the house and a bit of time away from the books, so can't complain.
And also, I think what's important is because of where he's been hunting, they're very particular about the trophies and maintaining the genetics.
Yeah. So what it is the farm, the area I'm hunting, which is quite a big area, has implemented a management strategy where everything we do is from the bottom up. So we're looking for mature animals, the smallest mature animals to shoot at a very reasonable price. So for instance, if you see a kudu bull that's mature and finished growing, and his horns only measure 45 or 46 inches, then you shoot him rather than trying to find a big trophy. Because as you eliminate the smaller breeding animals that are mature, your brackets improve. So you're only leaving the larger animals to breed. And it's proved to work very, very well. And the local hunts that we're doing with the South Africans, it works well for us because, or for them, because the South Africans aren't very trophy motivated. They're more hunting and venison motivated. So they don't mind shooting a mature animal that won't measure as long. So we're shooting a lot of animals, and it's all from the bottom up. And it's proving to be working very, very well on that place.
Well, that's fascinating. I know what you mean. Because we have South African doctors that are friends here, and they hunt on our place, and they are gleeful about shooting a doe deer, and they shoot them in the head. Don't matter how far away they are, they shoot them in the head because they want to make biltong or whatever. They don't want to waste any meat. It's very important. That's a nice thing to see. You know, what animals are? Pardon me.
What's critical is that they're constantly judging animals that are they must be finished and below a certain length at a hell of a distance, and you got to spend a lot of time deciding that that's the right animal. You know, I think you shot on at 400 and something yards the other day.
But all it comes down to is a kudu, which isn't a difficult animal to judge. We look at different profiles. So we take lots of pictures of the game on the farm and we profile them. And what helps a lot is once you've profiled an animal and then shot it, to measure it. So to see how close your call actually was. And because they all have so many different horn shapes, and the tips are always, one's a little bit longer, one's a little bit shorter, or the curls are slightly deeper on one, you get used to a specific type of animal. So we're looking for maybe a profiled kudu, which I'm happy to go and shoot. But I don't see that kudu. I see one that looks similar. I'll still know that I'll shoot it because I've profiled one that looks similar, so they'll probably measure the same. So we spend a lot of time profiling animals, looking at animals, and getting your mind into what animal you're looking for and what animal you're trying to harvest. So we work at the management program quite intensely, and then every animal that we shoot, we dissect quite carefully as well. We look at how old do we think the animal is with the horn growth that it has. How many years does that resemble? How many years do we think it has left to live? How many breeding years does it have left? And that helps to, just by looking at the horns, we already know what a 6 or 7 year old animal is, or what a 12-year-old animal looks like, and which ones we're happy to take out the breeding. Because if we see a really big animal, but we know that it's a 10 or 11-year-old animal and it's past its breeding time, we're happy to take that one out because it's not passing on its genes anymore. So it's a big learning curve as well, because there's not a lot of places that do that as intensely as that farm. So you learn a lot about the animal by hunting there. Yeah, it's pretty fun.
Explain to our listeners, how is a kudu finished? At what point is a kudu finished? Like as far as his horns go?
His horns on the third turn must either be pointing straight up, be hooking slightly forward, or have turned into an extra turn and be flaring outwards. So a beautiful one is like the one that Sandi shot last. The tips were pointing straight up. And you know that bull is never going to go past that point. Because once his horns have gone straight up, they're not going to go past that point. But if his horns are still pointing backwards or still pointing in, there's generally a chance that they'll lift up and point straight up, or that they'll bend outwards again.
So they make two curls, right? What we're talking about is that those horns actually make two curls, and it's at the top there. So if it's
After
pointing
the
straight
third
up,
curve.
that's done. But if it's got a
Generally
little,
speaking.
if it's got a little
Got a little
curve one
hook
way or the
forward,
other, yeah.
even better. Hook backwards, leave it.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Hook forwards or hooking off to the side, then use a shooter.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
What is your toughest animal to judge?
Kudu are pretty tricky. Oryx by far. Oryx is a difficult call. Nyala can be pretty tricky. Most of the spirals are pretty tricky. But I would say judging an Oryx, especially if he's not in a herd, is exceptionally difficult.
Yeah, an
Yes.
oryx on its own is difficult.
Yeah.
When there's no comparison. An oryx at 300 or 400 yards on his own, and there isn't a herd around him, is very difficult to judge accurately.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Hey,
That's really
But
cool.
that's where those optics come in, eh?
Mm-hmm. Quality.
Zeiss optics help a lot with the hunting. Yeah.
I don't know what's tough about oryx because we've shot two. They both are great.
Testament to the professional hunters. Yeah.
Well, that was because of Clint.
You know, as Clint said, we were talking when we were hunting mine on the last trip. We were up at the Kalahari and we talked about how big ones he's ever seen, and that he's never seen a bigger one than hers yet. So that and aardvark. Every time we go, we see aardvark, and he can't believe that.
So Ryan's binoculars are now tied together with wire. They've been through the bush so many times.
Wire and cable ties.
Those nice conquests are held together with wire and cable ties.
No. Oh.
Yeah,
The glass is still perfect.
the glass is still perfect.
Yeah, that's all that matters to me. Yeah.
I have to get them back and show them.
Or a picture.
They're
at
literally
least.
held together with wire and cable ties. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's funny.
Well, that's the thing, though. I mean, we were going through pictures that we have some pictures of the wall here, and where there's thorns that stick out past my hand. You know, so they're over 5-6 inches long. It's like it's so different than the world here. You know, there's just so many things that are so unique about South Africa. I've got a picture in the sand here. Up here, and a lot of people look at it and ask, what's that picture of it? There's not many people that know what it is. It's actually baboon, but you know, it's so foreign, right? And that's the cool part about it, is that for us, it's a very, very different place to go, right? Yeah. Well, we should
need to get back here. We got lots to show you and lots of places to
Lots
take
more
you.
to see.
This is almost really a bad thing to do because now we're really going to be passionate about.
You just want to get back in business class to fly there. That's all.
It's a long trip. It's nice to be comfortable or semi-comfortable, I guess.
You know, here's the other thing though I want to talk about is do people understand the costs that are involved? Like, I mean, what an incredible great deal hunting in Africa is. For instance, you've been here, Ryan, and you've seen deer and that here. The average whitetail hunt in Alberta is $6,500 for one whitetail. Now, $6,500 Canadian buys you a lot of hunting in South Africa.
Absolutely, yeah. No, that's a lot of money, correct?
Yeah.
I know you could have a really good time,
Yeah.
Shoot a lot of animals.
Yeah.
I know people have no idea that. I mean, they always have this idea that it is so expensive to hunt Africa, and it's not. It's not at all. And
Well, I think it could be expensive if you don't go with the right people. You know what I mean? Like I think that, you know, Guy, when you come to Edmonton, you are not the only African outfitter there to talk to, but in most cases, the whomever is manning the booth there is a what's the word?
He's a broker
a
or
broker or
representative.
yeah, but it's not the person that you're going to go hunting with. And so for the benefit of people who are listening or watching this podcast who've never heard us talk to you or about you before, I think it's a really quite a unique experience in South Africa to be met at the airport by the guy who's gonna, who first of all saw you at the Bolton Sportsman Show and corresponded with you, met you at the airport, takes you to your hunting concession. I mean, everything is so very personalized with your group, and you have a group of people who work with you who are long time employees or contractors or whatever the situation is. But I mean, it's not a bunch of people just coming and going because this week it was a good deal or whatever, right? It just it can't be stressed enough, I guess, that just because you get a bargain hunt, a show special or whatever, it could be more expensive to go on a trip like that.
Yeah, we firm, well, there's a bit of an antithesis in this. We treat every person in a way that they must have the best experience possible hunting with us here. What we do know is that many of them think it's their once in a lifetime trip. However, it's never once in a lifetime.
Clearly not for us.
And you really shouldn't tell them that, because then they're worried about, oh, I shouldn't do it the first time. It's kind of like crack, I shouldn't do it the first time.
I've got a professor from a university in Ireland whose wife is very concerned because her husband's had 6 once in a lifetime trips to Africa. Yeah.
Sure.
But every person must have absolutely the best possible experience that they can when they're with us. That's what we strive for.
Here's the thing that I want to point out, and this is so important. And I mean, it's people who have hunted the world a little bit, and we've been with many different outfitters and professional hunters and that kind of stuff. You folks, hands down, the passion that Ryan was showing there when he was talking about judging an animal, and that you won't let somebody shoot just an animal, and none of us know what these animals look like. So, I mean, the very first time, that I went kudu hunting, and Clint walked me by 4 animals that I would have gladly shot every one of them. Each one of them was finished as you were talking, but they were 40 or 42 inches long. I ended up shooting a 56-inch one, just a giant. But I mean, that's the difference between a 135-inch whitetail, a 5x5 that's all there, and a 170-inch whitetail that's all there. If you only just see that one animal and you don't know, I mean, you could be very happy shooting it and then later on learn the truth. But you guys won't let that happen. You guys are all hunters yourselves, and for you, it's the trophy is just as much your trophy as it is my trophy. And my hat's off to you. I mean, you guys have been awesome that way, and I trust implicitly. Even though we had a situation in Kalahari on the last trip there, when Clint said shoot, and I had just seconds to shoot that oryx that I shot, the Hemsbach, and it was like it was way too rushed for me, but I trusted him, and it's a phenomenal animal. I'm hoping that I'm expressing here that not many people have ever earned that kind of trust from me, but you guys have. And I mean, you make sure that people are having the best hunt and getting great animals.
Oh, we appreciate it. And well, that's what we strive for, and we appreciate that sentiment.
Yeah. Did I talk over you?
No. No, I just think that that word trust means an awful lot, right? Just, I mean, and we have hunted every trip that we've been there. We've been with Clint. He knows us, and he still wants or spends time with us a whole month at a time with no breaks. I think he's a genuinely great person, but he trusts us, and we trust him, so that when he says shoot that one, that's the one. And it was the same with my kudu, because we hunted for 4 days and whatnot. But then, because we hunt with knowledgeable people there, we're always on the lookout for whatever it is that we know he's looking for, or whomever we're with, right? So that last trip when we were up and we had to go through the fence, and we were driving up, and I was sitting in the back seat, and I happened to glance over, and I glanced again, and I said, Clint, can we stop? I saw something back there. And he goes, I saw something too. So then he went over the hill, and there was a buffalo. And we would have met face to face if we hadn't, taken a bit of a detour that morning for something else. But you find yourself looking for the same things, although obviously judging a kudu would be.
I love this one though. He says, well, we're just going to go down here, and we just got to kind of scoot like a warthog underneath that tree there. And he says to me, my butt look like a warthog? No, dear. you got the gun? No, dear. No, we've had a wonderful time with you folks, and we so appreciate how serious you take this business. It's terrible what's happened with what's going on in the world, but maybe soon we can all get back to enjoying some time around the braai.
Yeah, well, we certainly look forward to it, and it's going to happen. It's a matter of time.
Yeah,
we'll still be here. The animals aren't going anywhere.
Excellent. They'll just be bigger by the time we get there.
Well, we've taken up a bunch of time here. We're well over an hour and hour.
Yeah, someone must get back to his studies.
Okay.
So thank you folks for spending some time with us, and we really appreciate it. And to everybody watching and listening, we just want to take this time to give a little bit of a personal look to what Africa is about and why we're so excited about it. I know this is different than our trapping podcast, but we do have Married to the Hunt, our hunting series. We have that stuff everywhere. You can see some of our hunts with these folks and understand why we enjoy going there so much, and why we've become friends with them.
Yes.
So we want to thank you folks. Thanks, Guy. Thank you, Ryan.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. Yeah, and it was great chatting, and really super. We can't wait to see you guys again.
Yeah.
Yes.
We feel the same.
And to everybody out there in podcast land, thank you for joining us, and maybe we'll see you down the line. Sandy and I so enjoyed this podcast because it was a visit with old friends, but we forgot to ask them for their website. So rather than you folks having to get a hold of us to find out what their website is, I'm putting a couple bumps in here to let you know that you can find Guy and Ryan at www.wildhorizon.co.za.